we're back. So CCR, Willie and the Poor Boys is the name of the album, released November 2nd, 1969 by Creedence Clearwater Revival, also known as Creedence or CCR for short. This is their fourth album. It is their third of 1969, which is crazy.
They're prolific.
Yep. Yes. Not even the Beatles can say they released 3 albums in 1 year, as I found out.
That's true.
This Willie and the Poor Boys is arguably CCR at their peak in terms of popularity and critical acclaim, album sales, all of it. They were, behind. Beatles had just recently broken up, and they were the #1 rock band in America. A little bit about CCR. I'll keep this brief, and I will stop once we get to Willie and the Poor Boys era. They only performed from 1968 to 1972, very short amount of time. CCR, all 4 members are from El Cerrito, California, which is a Bay Area city north of Berkeley. I looked it up on Google Maps today.
It's also fun to say.
Mm-hmm. Yes, El Cerrito.
This reminds me of the Californians. El Cerrito, Boulevard, Del Taco.
Made up of 4 members, John Fogerty, Tom Fogerty, Stu Cook, and Doug Clifford. They started playing together in 1959 in junior high as the Blue Velvets.
You said 1959?
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's early.
Yep. Yes, they started young. I guess that's why they're so good. In 1964, in high school, they signed with the label Fantasy Records, which is a small jazz label in San Francisco. Their band name was then changed to the Gollywogs, which is a horrible name. They also did not like that name, incidentally.
And I also remember their contract being also equally as terrible, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's
we're getting there. Okay, gotcha.
So wait, they named themselves the Gollywogs and then said, "Oh wait, we hate this." Were they like high or something, or did somebody else choose it for them?
I think the label chose it for them.
Wow.
I'll double check that. They also switched their roles in the band at this time, and their instruments as well. Stu switched from piano to bass guitar, and Tom switched from lead vocals to rhythm guitar, and then John became the band's lead vocalist and primary songwriter, and that's where it stood for the rest of the time they were together. In 1966, 2 members of the band were drafted, or got their draft notices, so to avoid being conscripted, John Fogerty joined the U.S. Army Reserve, and Doug joined the U.S. Coast Guard Reserve. I couldn't find out exactly how long they were in this, but it seems to be about a year, and then they got out, and I guess they went back to playing music. In 1967, a man named Saul Zaentz bought the record label and offered them the chance to record a full-length album. In January of 1968, they renamed the band Creedence Clearwater Revival. According to band members, the name came from 3 different sources. Tom Fogerty's friend, Creedence Newball, television
quite
commercial.
The name there.
Is that his given name?
Yeah, I guess so. A television commercial for Olympia Brewing Company, which had clear water in the slogan or commercial, and 4 members, their renewed commitment to the band.
I thought it was going to be that Clarence Newball became Clarence Oldball, and that was the revival portion of it.
Damn, I should have named my kid Creedence. I didn't even know I could do that.
You can.
Oh. Sorry, I said Creedence Newball. So yes. Yeah, Creedence Oldball would be the revival.
Creedence, I guess. Clarence, who gives a shit? In 1968, their first hit was Suzy Q off of their first album. It received substantial play in the Bay Area and then expanded nationwide in the way that I guess radio DJs from around the country heard about music. Mm-hmm. They began touring incessantly, which was a hallmark of their career. And they released their second album, Bayou Country, on January 1969. This was their first album to go platinum and kicked off their run of singles and hit albums for 2 years. The band's third album, Green River, came out August 1969. 2 singles from that album were released shortly beforehand and were big hits as well. That's Green River and Lodi. Green River is the only other album we'll be discussing, which will be coming up in a little later on in the 60s. CCR continued to tour and played at Woodstock in August 1969, foreshadowing, in my opinion, problems with the band. They were not included in the Woodstock film because John Fogerty felt they had subpar performance, and Stu Cook disputes that and said that they were classic CCR. So.
I always heard the story that they also blamed the Grateful Dead for being so boring that it killed the crowd off before them, because that's who played directly before them. That was a apocryphal story that I always have heard about that. Is that true?
Yes, that has been confirmed. They went on after the Grateful Dead. Fogerty said that it was like a Dante scene, just bodies from hell, all intertwined in a sleep covered with mud.
Foreshadowing me listening to the Grateful Dead for many years of my life as well.
John, were you at Woodstock?
Can you imagine the Grateful Dead and CCR following them? You want to talk about two bands that do, one band draws it out, and the other band, man, they get right to those hooks and just bang them out. And occasionally when they do go long, it's a totally different type of long. So
yeah, I read something along the lines that by the time Grateful Dead had played like one or two songs for 30 minutes, CCR had played like 9 songs set.
Yeah, right.
Yep. And then after Woodstock in August, they released this album in November of 1969.
So they did Bayou Country, Green River, and Willie and the Poor Boys all in the same freaking year. That's unbelievable.
It sure is.
Yep. And
they were
Fogerty
touring doing all this?
Constantly.
Because that's crazy. Because that's not like Fogerty, with the Doors, like where they threw a dog shit album in there one year and they ran out of material. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's like 3 classic albums.
Yep, I know. And Fogerty is, he's the sole songwriter for the most part. He's writing all these songs and the music and what's the word? Composing the music for the covers and things like that as well.
Wow.
So Willie and the Poor Boys reached number 3 on the Billboard charts and went 2 times platinum. The 2 singles off of this album were Down on the Corner, which reached number 3, and Fortunate Son, which reached number 14th. As with all of their albums, it is a mix of covers and originals. The year 1969 was a remarkable chart year for the band. They had 3 top 10 albums, 4 hit singles, charting at 2, 2, 2, and 3, with 3 additional charting B-sides. That was the other thing about their prolific music. Fogerty insisted on releasing A-sides with B-side singles as well that were also hits. And I think he said, the Beatles were doing it, so we're going to do it too.
Yep. I was going to say the Beatles. That's the one group I think of that would do that. Yeah.
Yep. On November 16th, 1969, they also performed Fortunate Son and Down on the Corner on the Ed Sullivan Show. I'll end it there since we'll be talking about their follow-up album in the 70s when we get there, and we'll talk about Green River in a few weeks. Willie and the Poor Boys is currently number 68 on besteveralbums.com list. The album cover is Duck Keys Market in West Oakland. And the cover shows there's some, I always question this sort of facts that I see online, but this was thought of as sort of a half concept album. It shows them dressed up as Willie and the Poor Boys on the cover of the album from Down on the Street. And apparently with those instruments that they mentioned, like the washboard and the bathtub bass or whatever it is. And apparently they were messing around for the cover of that album and then started playing and then went back and recorded Down on the Corner as a result or something.
So the song was inspired by the album cover?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's a new one.
Yeah. They do play the washboard on Poor Boy Shuffle as well.
Oh yeah, they do.
That was good.
Yes, they do.
And Creedence, this was I'll leave that for another time. I have a good quote from their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction or on the website. Some other fun trivia that I found, they were known for their tight shows. They never played for more than 45 minutes, and they rarely had encores. Fogerty thought that they were pointless, and just while the rest of the band thought they were a thanks to the fan, Fogerty was like, "No, you get what you get," and they rarely kind of deviated from from what they played. There wasn't like spontaneity, and I guess because they were so good and tight, their songs live sounded almost exactly like the songs on the album.
That's like the Stones, though. They rarely ever did encores because they were tight as a drum as well as a blues band, like as tight as you can get. So I think the idea that you have to do encores is now built into stuff, but back in the 60s, that was still, up for grabs. But yeah, if you're getting a CCR show for 45 minutes where they're,
cranking out 11 songs or
cranking out 11 songs that are as tight as the album. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you guys' thoughts on encores for bands? Do you like them for show when you go to shows?
I expect them, right?
You do?
It's because not because of me personally, but just because that's what concerts are like nowadays, right? Like,
Yeah.
And I especially want them if there's like a song that I haven't heard yet that I really want them to play, right? So there's that hope.
Yeah.
There's that hope still that they would come out and play it. So for selfish reasons and from just going to many, many concerts, and just that's the whole idea of an encore is not what it was back in the day, because the idea is that like we're going to stay here until you come out and play, and now it's just like bands they don't just have one, some have two or even three. So if I'm going to go see a band, usually I like them a lot. And so if they want to play more music and they just want to take 5 minutes to let me clap, I don't care. So I'm fine with more music.
Yeah. John, what about you? Any thoughts on
I have actually never really liked encores. I like the idea of you go out there, you play a balls out set, and then you walk off the stage, and that's what it is. I think sometimes shows become lesser because people save the stuff for the encores, when in reality the show could be set up and you could kind of feel the show out. And I like when certain artists feel the show and alter their set with songs they can play in the moment, as opposed to having an encore. And sometimes I get the appeal of it, but I usually like to go see bands when they're playing what's new, as opposed to them just doing their greatest hits. So that's why a lot of my concert going is more built around bands that are in the now, as opposed to bands that have large back catalogs, because they do become, encore orgies at the end. So,
well, we did see, I think the three of us were privy to a show that was like an hour. That was just like not like the Hive show that we saw. And I don't know if they did encores, but if shows were more like that, if they were more like that and they just did an hour and it felt like it was 3 because of just the energy they had, then that's one thing. But most bands aren't like that.
I believe Per Lundqvist. I believe that is the lead singer's name, correct?
Per?
Something similar.
I thought it was Pele.
Pele or Per, like Lundqvist or Lindqvist.
You forgot the Howland. It's Howland. Pele.
I do remember him basically saying, "That is enough. We have been good," and then he left the stage, which I thought was pretty awesome.
We are so lucky to be here. You are so lucky to be here.
Yep. And so I do like a little bit of that, where you're so confident in how good you play and you're tight enough to play that it's like, yep, that's all you need.
Yeah, I think that I'm of the mindset that sometimes encores feel a little forced, and they should just tack the good songs on at the end and not have an encore.
Oh, they're totally forced.
Or like song number 2 or 3 to set the tone. You play a song that you can get away with that first song that people don't know as well, but they're excited to hear the band, and then the second song is a song you do know, and so you get that combination and you set the tone. I do like how artists sometimes do that. So.
Nice segue question, Josh. That was a nice little.
Yeah, that was just good. Off the dome. That came to me.
Hits the dome.
The only other thing I was going to say, as far as CCR Trivia, they released 6 albums in 2.5 years, which is crazy. CCR holds the record for the most singles to reach number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 without ever scoring a number 1 single. They had 5 singles.
Wow.
5 number 2s.
That is a bizarre stat.
That is
crazy.
That is also a load of bullshit.
The compilation album Chronicle, which is their 20 greatest hits, originally released in 1976, is still on the Billboard 200 album chart as of August 2020. It's expecting to reach...
I don't think I know anyone who does not own that album, who listens to rock music.
It's expecting to reach the 500-week mark sometime in December of 2020. It's been awarded 10 times platinum. It's sold over 10 million albums.
Oh, my God.
And this is a little combing the stacks trivia for you guys. What other band that we've talked about has covered Cotton Fields this same year, 1969?
Ooh.
No, wait, did they
Not-
cover it on an album that we not on an album
No.
we did? Okay.
No, just a band that we've talked
A
about.
band that we've
being
talked about who
covered.
covered it.
Any ideas?
I'm gonna say Fairport Convention.
That would be off the out of the left wing guess. but
Off
no,
the
that's-
dome, Josh.
I am going to say Big Brother and the Holding Company.
No, the answer is the Beach Boys.
Ooh.
And
John.
it is
Wow.
not a good song.
No, well, I mean, that is not their genre, Cotton Fields.
Yeah, I went and listened to that. I did not like it. So enough about history and trivia time. CCR-WILLY and the Poor Boys. Great CCR album or best CCR album?
Second best CCR album, which is still incredibly. I mean, this is right up there with the best albums we've done. How this is like 68 is mind-boggling. It was 68, right? Something like that, or 67?
69. November 69.
69,
Summer
dude.
69. So, yep.
I just rewatched that too.
Let me just start. That's too low because this album's fantastic. It's classic CCR in that the hooks are incredible. The musicianship is basic, but also complex enough that they change it up. You've got big hits like Down the Corner and Fortunate Son. Then you've got stuff like Cotton Fields. I'm glad you picked that because I don't know how that wasn't like a top 5 single because it's made to be a single. Yeah.
Number one, fun fact, it was number 1 in Mexico.
Number one. Well, the Mexicans had it right. I mean, and then you've got, one thing CCR does that I love about them, and I am not normally a fan of the long song, but CCR does long songs well. Like Effigy, and Feelin' Blue, which are way longer than the other songs on here, they do not feel like 6 minutes and 27 seconds. And then later, when they do I Heard It Through the Grapevine, which I think was almost like 13 minutes. It's just really does long. Not. It's
Suzy Q's long too, isn't it?
Suzy Q's long. Yep.
8:30, I think, when I listened to it the other day. Yeah.
But they never drag. They give variation to the albums. I mean, it's just John Fogerty's voice is classic. The tightness of the songs and the construction of the songs. You always know it's CCR when they're singing, but not in a way that you get tired of it. It's just, it's just fantastic. This is one of the best albums we've covered from start to finish. There's not a bad song on this album, and I can honestly say that. The songs range from good to excellent, and everything else is in between that. So there's my. I hate to be so simplistic, but I love CCR and I love this album. And while I like Green River a little bit more, that is like picking your favorite child in some ways. You like them, you love them both. So
agreed. Hard to dispute any of that. Go ahead, Matt.
I'm going to come right out and say it. This is the best album we've covered this whole time.
Yeah.
CCR, if it weren't for the Beatles, they're my favorite 60s. I love CCR, and I can't imagine anybody listening to any number of their songs just being like, eh. Like, if you're, like, listening to these guys and you just – I don't know what to say. This is a band that, to me – it's got a little bit of everything, and it's tight, it's rock, it's country, you're right, John Fogerty's voice is fantastic, and the consistency and they have their own unique sound, but it's just everything's so consistent and everything is just so good. It doesn't sound dated. This, to me, there's lots more country rock here than there ever was with what the Byrds were doing, or some of those other albums, because there's elements of country here and folk and rock. They just blend so well together. I absolutely agree with you talking about the longer songs. When and it's hard, when I first really got into them, it was Chronicle, of course, that I listened to. And actually, I don't think I bought that. I think I just stole it from my brother. He went to college or something, and it was just laying in his room. I was like, oh, let me listen to this. Or maybe it was maybe it was either my brother's or my dad's, but I ended up like taking it from them.
Well, on the line, we've got Mike. Mike, did he steal the album?
Yeah. Mike could definitely clear that up, possibly. I don't know
it's
why
also
he would
funny,
leave that at home.
It's a testament to how many albums that has sold, in that you can't remember if it was your dad's copy, your brother's copy, your copy. That means that everybody had a copy of it.
It definitely wasn't mine. Yeah. It was, yeah.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, within households, multiple people own it of different ages.
Yeah. So that was when and oddly enough, when I first listened to it, because I think that album starts off with Suzy Q, and then I heard it through the grapevine. I remember initially kind of like, these are too long, I'm going to skip through them. So for a while, I never listened to them, and then a little while later, I did, and I was like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, these are fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So Effigy was a song that I never knew was a Creedence song. I knew it originally as an Uncle Tupelo song because they covered that. And I had it. I don't think I had that Uncle Tupelo album that it was on. It was on a compilation album, and then I found out later that it was CCR, and I couldn't believe it because that song, again, it doesn't sound like a 60s rock song.
Exactly what I was thinking listening to that song, because that guitar chord twang or whatever that is sounds like some like 90s band, like Nirvana or all the other bands from Seattle, that are of that grunge rock era.
Yeah, it's a grungy, it's like a Neil Young kind of grungy, late.
Well, it's that reverb. It's that reverb sound, but CCR does the reverb sound still tight.
Yeah,
like in the way that kind of Neil Young does it on Harvest, or Nirvana does on the songs that are considered the tight Nirvana songs. Territorial Pissings and Stay Away, you know what I mean, those type songs. So yeah, I agree 100%. It's a distinct sound.
Yeah, and it's so good. And the Midnight Special, I love that.
Great cover.
That's such a great song. I saw him play that. That was always a fun memory because I saw them play that at Bonnaroo. Or not them. I obviously wasn't. It was just Fogerty. And I was like it was like a beautiful day, and I was walking to where my family and friends were hanging out. And I remember just singing it as I was walking down, trying to find them in the crowd because they were at the big stage. And then I met my eyes locked with my brother's eyes, and he was singing it too, and we were singing it together and high five. And it's fantastic. I love Creedence. I can't say enough of good things about them. It's one of my favorite classic rock bands.
Can I also mention that John Fogerty writes great songs, and he writes great songs about social commentary. And as a card-carrying member of the proletariat myself, I love John Fogerty's working class songs because they never get too sticky.
They're not preachy.
They're not preachy or sticky, and I don't mean to pick on Springsteen because he writes some great ones too. But like how Springsteen can sometimes be like, I went down to the courthouse and stuff, and
he's a little too earnest at times.
Earnest would be a great way to put it, Matt. And Fogerty is never earnest. He just sort of creates these characters that tell it like it is. And obviously, Fortunate Son's a perfect example. I mean, that's a protest song that, despite being beat to death in Blue Jean commercials and everything like that, despite being this profound song, still manages to have resonance despite the fact that it's almost become like a cliche for war movies. But you could still listen to it and still hear what a great song it is. And his lyrics are, whether it's just a basic tale of, it almost like feels like rustic living, like cotton fields or down on the corner, or something, Effigy, obviously hanging in effigy, it has a political meaning to it. A lot of songs about the war that I think are enhanced by the fact that he was a veteran and could kind of speak of it and was not just some sort of like long-haired hippie. And I think he'd ever even viewed himself that way. I think, in my opinion, John Fogerty wrote songs for working class people that could also be accessed by other people. And I love that underpinning of that ethos in his songs. And I also can really appreciate that his songs are never overly earnest, but also plain spoken enough that you know what he's trying to say. And that is a hard thing to do. Another guy who I thought really has a skill in that is someone like Tom Petty is who I think of when I think of John Fogerty, because he's able to write love songs that manage to not be sappy love songs, but are profound love songs, right? But also tight. I feel like that's how John Fogerty writes songs, but he doesn't write many love songs. He writes, and that's one thing that stands out about CCR too. They write very few songs about love and relationships. Most are about issues and societal stuff and places and feelings. And that's another thing I love about CCR, because it's unique. Not a lot of people do that. You know what I mean? Most people are writing about their relationships, and he rarely does.
They are the band that really kind of went the opposite of direction as to what the trends were at the time. They went to that roots rock, they went to swamp rock, as they're called, and they went to the South. They went to the South when psychedelia was going on, and they really invented this persona from the band, and they weren't even from the South or from Louisiana or anything. But with his voice, he just like embodies that for some reason. And the music, what John said about the lyrics in the songs, like it's not, the music carries the song as much as the lyrics do. Like you don't even have to, you can just listen to the music and not even like pay attention to the words. That's how good this is. Or you could do vice versa, right? And listen to the lyrics and not the music.
But even if you're not a lyrics person, you're going to pick up the lyrics because of how catchy it is. Like we talked about, he's not from Louisiana, but you can definitely probably already hear like, down in Louisiana, just, like you can like pick up the lyrics without even trying to, even if you're not a person who normally listens to them.
Such a good song.
It's so incredibly catchy. This is like a handshake band for me, like a band that is just like means so much. It doesn't like necessarily emotionally mean a lot to me, but it just embodies like what I love about music and personality. And as soon as I started listening to this album, I was like, shoot this right into my veins, because this is like crack or something. I just love every song. There's no weak songs on this album.
Which is why I was like that. All those stats that you were saying, Josh, about how they never had a #1 single, right? They were always number 2 or 3 with the album charts. It's like, that is a crime. This is a fantastic band that everybody needs to know about, and it's interesting because I never really knew any albums, so I can't compare this album with their other works, because again, I was a Chronicle Volume 1 and Volume 2 guy. But I was pleasantly, I just like, let me just play it and just see what's on it. And I knew a lot, and the stuff that I didn't know, I was like, man, this is freaking great too, So it's not a hard listen. It's fantastic. And the fact that they were, would you say they were around for 4 years, 5 years, something like that?
Well, and 68 to 72.
Yeah. So 4 years, and they're doing 3 albums, and the output, and it's so consistent and so good. Fantastic band, fantastic album.
I'll leave with 2 things. I think it's pretty obvious that I love this band and this album. So there we go. If it's not the best album we've covered, it's top 2 or 3 with Nina Simone and that Birds album,
Aretha,
Yesterday, and Aretha. That's like kind of the 4 that are in there for me. And then right underneath, that's that USA album that's very polarizing on our podcast. But I will say this: number 1, I look forward to when we talk about them later, because CCR's like history as a band and how much they hate each other is fascinating. And I didn't even do research, but I'm very aware of that, not to mention their record contract stuff. And number 2, Communist X listener Jeff, I have to at least shout this out. If you walk into any place that has a jukebox with our friend Jeff, he will, with a masochistic streak that he owns, play the version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine, which runs for a cool 13 to 14 minutes and is probably the worst song you can pick for a jukebox because of the amount of time it takes. But that is a Jeff staple of picking that song on a jukebox. So it's
I wholeheartedly support that. That's getting your money's worth. I also love throwing in Neil Young's Cowgirl in the Sand and Down by the River, because if I'm gonna spend 50 cents on a song, I want it to last for 12 minutes.
And I am more of the thought of I want the visceral emotion immediately from a couple different songs. So I'll put in the 3 quarters or 50 cents back to back to back to hit 3 big ones, but not overstay the welcome. But Jeff, Communist X listener Jeff, is similar to you, Matt, in that he would like to get his 50 cents worth for his one song that plays. Yeah.
And if any jukebox has some Genesis on, it's like Supper's Ready, 20 minutes, that's even better. John, I feel you're getting ripped off, John.
I fear that I would maybe elbow you if we were in the same bar. We often have to hide the quarters from Communist X listener Jeff for that very reason, so they can hear our own stuff. Yeah.
I'd give him some of mine.
Yeah, if anybody plays Pink Floyd, I'm smashing that jukebox. So.
There's a lot of Pink Floyd for you still to listen to, Josh.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows?
You're just getting started.
If I could find myself finding things to like about them, you know what I mean? I think that this could be a journey that we all welcome ourselves on. Who knows? We might change our mind on certain stuff. But I can tell you one thing I'm not changing my mind on. Like, this is like the easiest thumbs up you could give. Listen to this. If you're somehow not familiar with CCR, like, listen to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just blind buy their albums on iTunes. I don't care.
And you could do it if you want to do the Chronicles, great. But I'd actually recommend listening to the albums, because it isn't like a drop off from their greatest hits like it is for some bands. There's just all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah.
Also, one final thought I had on this. I know I want to get moving on too, but the fact that this was like the most popular band in America at the time, if not, I don't know how much they toured internationally, but that's a testament to like good popular music, because there's not bands like this top of the charts that I connect to in the same way.
No,
so,
not even close.
I always joke around, like, I'm shocked that there's no bands that sound like Boston nowadays. Like, how can you not have anyone who tries to make that sound like Boston does, the big power chords? And I would say the same about CCR. Like, I guess Kings of Leon kind of tried to go that swamp rock thing, and did fill that a little bit. So maybe that is an example of someone who tried to do it. But yeah, like, it's just kind of amazing to me that no one's, with all the stuff that's being sort of ripped off and reappropriated, you'd think that someone would be like, you know what I'm going to be? Like the modern CCR. Like, it seems like it would be.
I think I think there probably are bands out there like that, but they're just not selling. They're not they're not doing what these guys did.
I think the market's probably a little different too, internationally, and more,
or just
record labels are completely different.
Or just there aren't a lot of people that can write songs like, John
Fogerty.
John Fogerty. Yeah. I mean, that could be the other thing. It's like, why does nobody sound like Tom Petty? Well, not a lot of people can write songs that are as catchy as Tom Petty, right? No. So, yeah.
Nope.
All right.
Well, unanimous praise from us. Listen to them.